Our first presenter for this lead marketing conference from CPG Matters will tell us how the CPG industry is using artificial intelligence. Joining me now is Joel Cartwright, industry principal with Vistex. Joel, the podium is yours.
John, thank you very much for the time. Thanks you for the audience and attendees, and congratulations on your 25th Lead Marketing Conference. That's great. My name is Joel Cartwright. I'm the industry principal for consumer products at Vistex. I've been in consumer packaged goods for 25 plus years. The first 12 on the manufacturing side, Sara Lee, Sunny Delight Beverage, and Kimberly Clark. 12, 13 years ago, I made the transition over the software side, where I've worked with clients and software providers regarding trade promotion management and optimization software. And as the optimization software is beginning to evolve, it's beginning to evolve that modeling and data science into encompassing AI and machine learning. So in speaking with clients, there's a lot of discussion. What does this mean? What is AI and machine learning? For Vistex, this is kind of our methodology, and we're thinking about it and discussing it really with working with our clients. The first thing, let's go through the presentation topics. Just talk about artificial intelligence, machine learning, and predictive modeling, how it all works and how it works together. What are the reports and capabilities, talking about the solution delivery component, training, support, and so forth. And we'll go from there with questions and answers, and then overall summary. So diving in, I always like to, when folks talk about it, they say, well, I need artificial intelligence. I say, okay, well, what do you want it for? What do you need it for? I don't know. I just know I need it. So, okay, well, let's kind of break it down. Well, first off, do you understand what artificial intelligence is really doing? And I always have to reference back to the old HAL 9000 from the 2001. It's the theory and the development of computer systems that help perform tasks that normally require some sort of human intervention or human intelligence. So it's software applications that are essentially basically learning. And so what it talks about artificial intelligence and machine learning. So those two phrases are kind of used basically interconnected. They're basically the same. So when you think about artificial intelligence and machine learning, as I mentioned, they're interchangeable. Both are kind of distinct yet closely related. So AI is really computer software that mimics the ways that humans think, and it's typically this software is working in conjunction with other data science and modeling and predictive analytics capabilities. The machine learning component is a subset of that. Now it uses, as I mentioned, the algorithms. It's using the data science produced models, and we'll talk a little bit about what a model is. But the models then can perform the tasks of changing the model, tweaking the model, and working with the models. So it's helping to replace those components. So in the machine learning component, what it's creating, it's machine learning component, it's creating a comprehensive set of kind of inputs, specific data. So what data do I need, and what data do I need to gather to create that desired output? So machine learning says, all right, I need to first look at the comprehensive set of data inputs. Then I say, okay, I have all this data. Now, how do I put it into a format that I can learn something? I could take all this historical data, and how do I make it understand or use it to then to derive and reach some sort of a data output? Because I want to learn from all this historical data. And then when it does actually spit out the data, the machine learning to us says, well, is that the right data? Is this what I'm expecting? Is this what I know or is expected to be the results? If I'm saying I'm looking at the history of orange juice and all of a sudden the output becomes lemonade, the machine really didn't learn anything. But its ability to gather that data, formulate it, and then make sure it's picking out the desired outcome or output is being correct. So there are a lot of current applications of machine learning. There's the dimensionality reduction. There's the discovering data structure, and there's a lot of big data and visualization. So if anything coming away from this, machine learning and AI is really talking about expanding the control and management of data and using that data to encompass it into our predictive capabilities. So it's talking about it through an unsupervised learning and through gathering a dimensionality and gathering all that information. And it's then taking that information and clustering it into particular segmentations and targeted marketing and so forth. So it's also using reinforcement learning. So we're using it, making real-time decisions. So you have your Alexa or your Google, your device that says, you ask it, what's the weather? What's it telling you? What's the weather today? So it's going out and saying, all right, here's what's going on in real time. It's learning. It's learning to say, oh, when your Alexa and your Google is saying, Joel, you normally buy cat food when you go to the grocery every 2 weeks. Do I need to put that on the list? So it's also talking about what's called supervised learning, where it says I need to give it specific diagnostics that it has to run. So it's basically making sure that it's classifying things correctly. So when it's gathering all this data, it's saying, okay, I need to classify it and put it in a particular. So the supervised learning is telling the AI and the machine learning to say, okay, this is once you've gathered this information, this is how you need to cluster it and to put it together. And then it starts taking that information and puts it into what's called a regression format to say, all right, I need to look backwards. So there's a lot of current applications going on with AI. It's gathering data, it's clustering data, it's classifying data in multiple formats, and it's saying, okay, let's go ahead and figure out what's the historical look and what's the look forward when we start to put all this data together. Now, a big question I always get asked when we're talking to clients, because they're migrating from predictive analytics, predictive modeling. In the consumer product space, you talk about trade promotion optimization. It's predicting the outcome using historical merchandising condition data, washing it through an algorithm. It's taking 2 or 3 data sources to say, okay, when you run this promotional merchandising condition or a feature, a display, or this ad, it's predicting what the outcome is going to do. So is predictive modeling, is that a form of AI? Well, yeah, it is. It's a form of AI. It's that gathering data, it's recording the data, washing it through a model, and it predicts the actual outcome. And essentially right now, how this algorithms are created, how their algorithms are tuned, it's done by a data scientist. There's a person that's working on that. And that person is then testing the models and really taking that, making sure the models are accurate, because things change with time. So the question is, predictive modeling AI? It kind of is. It kind of is to an extent. So then we talk about there's some current applications. I talked about the data gathering and so forth. So where we're seeing a lot of the applications of predictive modeling is in banking, it's in medical industry, it's in insurance and so forth. It's loan underwriting. So it's gathering again all this data and putting it together in components to say, all right, what's the risk score? What's the valuation of the property? It's looking at how can I gather multiple data sources in the medical field to say, all right, I need to gather all these data points and then predict what a serious medical event could be. Personalized treatment plans. Now, this is key. Personalized treatment plans. We talk about that in the medical industry, and that's important. But that's how it's going to morph when we get into the consumer products component. But really, it's gathering multiple data points to help predict, and it's being utilized in multiple industries. So this is not just specific to consumer products. So really the next phase of understanding is how the artificial intelligence is capturing the big data, it's automating that and transforming it into optimization and transforming it how I can essentially want to predict how I want to work with the customer. So what we're doing is, first off, when you start talking about testing or talk about AI, we need to start doing some sort of testing with the models. So we're saying, what's our reports that show the price and the volume changes? What are the specific insights we want it to do? So we want to test the model within our application, within our data science, to make sure it's showing the correct volume changes. There's a correct distribution on our different components. Is the time series correct? And then we want to take that information all right, I need to take this information and put into sort of what if scenarios. And at this point, we're working with just specific data points, 4 or 5 data points, a price point, a date range, a product, a specific merchandising condition. So only a limited 4 or 5 data points that I'm using in my model. So this can essentially be managed by a human person. Somebody can say, yeah, these are the 5 data points I need to go gather. These are the 5 data points I need to compile. And then I need to wash that through my model and then spit out what a predictive outcome is. And this today is basically our optimization. And then what we do is, of course, is testing this through our components. So there's a huge strategy we focus on, because we have to test the models. Otherwise, the models may not be accurate. But the key, what we want to do, and then start introducing AI, and what the consumer products want to introduce when AI is they want to start to eliminate that kind of data scientist touch, because we're going to start now introducing additional data points outside of the traditional merchandising conditions I was talking about. So some of the use cases before we get into it, from a use case from a retailer's perspective, I need to construct and predict, construct a brand new promotion schedule. So I need to predict what that will be. So if I'm a retailer, I need to predict how I want to promote my products. And I need to come up with a new one, because I need to understand, because I'm changing it. I've never done this before. I need to predict what the potential of the outcome was going to be, because this could be a huge investment. I need to modify the existing vendor promotion schedule. And because I may need to narrow some objectives, because I've got constraints on my marginalization or my margin component I need to hit. But the key component is I need to optimize that calendar. I want to make sure that my customers are coming in. When they come into the store, they're looking for seasonal items. They're looking for the items that's related. So now I'm starting to introduce other data points and concepts outside of the traditional merchandising conditions. Those data points could also be online information, how the shopper shops traffic across the internet, banner rates, click-through rates, as far as the banners themselves. So as a retailer, I need to understand that. The other use case is very similar for a manufacturer. The main component is I need this optimization predictive model to predict my base customer, who that person is who's buying my product every day. Again, as I mentioned before, the optimization is saying, okay, what's going to be that additional incremental volume on the merchandising conditions? What are the scenarios that I need to have to put together to put the most optimal plan? So traditionally, again, I'm focusing on 4 or 5 different data points and conditions, but I need to start introducing more, because I need to get a little bit more shopper specific. And that's what the retailer and the consumer are looking for. So the key component that, as I mentioned, is helping with the data science, because there's a lot of work involved with putting these models together. Again, predictive modeling is kind of AI, but I still have manual intervention, who's a data scientist who's defining the models, who's testing the models. They're testing the data storage project. And then these models or algorithms that I keep talking about, they need to be refreshed. Seasonality, there's certain change, there's certain constraints. Pricing goes up, costs go up, costs fluctuate. The preference of consumers fluctuates. So there's a lot of changes that are occurring. So you need to continuously refresh the models. So a data scientist now has to do that. There's somebody, data science is currently going in and saying, all right, I need to define this model. I need to test the model and so forth. So, but there's got to be a way where I can maybe automate this process. Now, that's where AI takes over. So what the AI and the machine learning starts to do, it starts to manage that predictive model, that model's life cycle. It includes the experimentation, on the model, of the testing. The reproducibility is, as the model continues to wash data through it and predicts, is it correct? Is it gathering the correct data storage? So when AI begins to take over, it starts to track the data. It's starting to record all the data and the queries, and it records to the experiments. You say, all right, I ran this experiment and test on the model. Here's the outcome, and I will need to catalog that, because I need to compare that when I run the model again. So when doing these type of consolidations of data tracking, data storage, and the experimentation, I can then begin to package the data science and the models to be more out of the box, to be less, I got to build a model, I got to do so forth. And so instead of having to start from scratch every time, by introducing AI machine learning, I can get to more of an AI approach, more of an out of the box approach. Understanding that out of the box approach still has to be tweaked a little bit by manufacturer, but I'm not reinventing the wheel every time. It also allows for the flexibility in the deployment. So they can be diverse in serving in different environments, on cloud, behind the cloud, on a single laptop. So it helps to reduce the amount of cost to deploy any sort of optimization capability. More importantly, it's addressing the concerns of data storage. I've got multiple data points that I'm starting to introduce into my models. I got to store that data. I've got to notate it. I've got to go out and make sure there's no new additional data. And I need to make sure that the models themselves, when the components of the algorithms within the model that has to go get the data, it's pointing to either a central repository, or it's going to multiple points. They're saying, okay, the AI is saying, in order to grab this piece of data point, I need to go here. But to grab this piece of data point, I need to go to this storage capability because I can't intertwine those things. So what it's doing, AI machine learning, it's starting to take over and starting to automate a lot of redundant data science work. So it's not as scary as everybody thinks, but it has to talk about it's automating that predictability. It's allowing to start to introduce additional data points. And that's why it's a good fit for CP, consumer products. It's a good fit for consumer products because we're starting to now be able to automate data. And more importantly, we're retailers and we're manufacturers in consumer products, especially the customers I speak to and the clients I speak to, is they need to get to a more consumer focused type of promotional strategy. The old ways are kind of not working right now. So in order to introduce that consumer focused type of promotional strategy, I have to expand my data points. I have to say, well, because I'm focused on the consumer, I can't just worry about the price at shelf or the merchandising condition. I need to start to introduce more of the whole, emerging markets. What are the weather trends? I need to understand specifically demographics. I need to start introducing the components of those that are outside data sources. They're calling big data, blog postings, the web, Facebooks. Where is my consumer shopping? Where are they on social media? What are they talking about? Specific location, reputation management. You see all these websites to manage your reputation. What am I looking at? Geo, large components across the globe because I'm traveling, different schematics. Talking about speech, what am I taking pictures of? What am I streaming? Because as a retailer and manufacturer, these are kind of the data areas. And I need to start to go out and look, and software applications out there now tracking how you're traveling across the internet. You click on a shoe website, it's where do I go there? What do I go there? So it's tracking all that information. So as a retailer and a manufacturer, I need to track all those data points because I need that information to begin to understand my consumer, because I need to begin building that consumer focused plan. So the big component of AI is collecting and consuming a lot of data. They need this data because they need to understand the consumer. So we always talk about the Internet of Things. I haven't talked about it here, my apologies, but it's the Internet of Things is, in addition to focusing on the consumer itself, here's all these data points I need to gather, but I also need to understand that total cost of selling to the consumer. So as a manufacturer or retailer, of course, I need to create that consumer focused plan, but at what cost? So now into thing to start about, we're seeing applications of AI and in machine learning in consumer products is that gathering information, the total cost of doing business. So it's no longer an average. It's no longer an element of guesswork. This is I think it's going to be a cost. It's tracking that cost component from the fields, getting to the storage, the food processing facilities, food manufacturers, out to the distributor, out to the retailer. So I'm starting to introduce concept across the global supply chain that in keeping all those cost components together and managing that. When I start to develop plans, when I start to optimize my consumer-focused trade plan, I need to understand these data elements because it's a margin component. I need to make sure that I'm not, when I come up with this consumer-focused plan, it's not impeding or impacting my margin. So it's the huge connecting the dots of the total cost of selling to the consumer. So why does the consumer products, or why AI is a good fit for CP? As I mentioned, you have a consumer-focused promotional activity. There's a lot of information that needs to be captured from the supply chain, the costs, but it's the sheer size and scale of the industry. There's a lot to understand from what the consumer needs. We talk about social media and so forth. We talk about all those data elements. I need to understand what the consumers. There's a lot of data out there. As a manufacturer, and I've got products already in the marketplace, I need to understand new products, what's coming up, what's my competition. I need to understand what's on the horizon. Or if I'm creating new products coming into the market, what's going to be the impact and so forth. The cost of new products, the risks that it will be. If working for manufacturers, you've seen the introduction of new products. New products a small percentage of those products actually succeed. So I need to understand, is this a wise investment for the new product if I'm trying to introduce this into a market? The consumer behavior, consumer trends, how do I understand what the consumer is shopping for? We have a huge fluctuation, gluten-free, non-gluten-free, GMO, non-GMO. Uh, you want to talk to consumers who are focused on this or specific industry trend related to a focus on sustainability. So I need to understand the fluctuations and capturing the differences in the consumer behavior and those trends. As I mentioned before, the biggest component is I now have a new area that I have to focus on, omni-channel, online. So how the shopper shops in store, now I have to understand where my product sits, how many click through, what's the search engine. My search engine, is my product optimized when I put it into the search engine on Amazon. And then I now have to understand I have to maybe divide my trade investment costs, online versus brick and mortar. Where do I need to put that? So the sheer size and scale of the information that's required requires AI and machine learning, because I'm pulling in a lot of consumer needs. I have to deal with new products, deal with the consumer trends, and now I have the whole omni-channel shift, moving customers who are typically brick and mortar. That shift is increased to be more online shoppers. So it's important to understand the size and the scale, and that's why it's a good fit. Another thing is, as I mentioned too, and really to talk about an opportunity for AI machine learning is, again, that new products. You've seen a lot of new products that come in the markets and so forth. So as a manufacturer, there's a significant amount of risk involved. So, and if I don't have any information, through the traditional historical data, price point, merchandise, same as, I need to go out and gather other information. So I can say, yeah, this is a viable option for new products. Dollar Shave Club. Who would have known that you would buy razors through the mail? But AI machine learning gather the information. They saw that it was out there and say, yeah, that will work. Consumers are tired of spending a lot of money in store buying razors. And they want to focusing on zero-based budgeting. So they want to say, all right, how can I come this to market last year? So how can I kind of keep that net neutral or come in new? So what are the information that I need? I need to help AI and machine learning identify what task are you trying to solve for? What do you need to get this task done? You need to evaluate the different components and data elements that are needed to get this to market, and the setting the budget and the numbers and the priorities. So the constraints related. So it's, again, gathering in a tremendous amount of information to understand and to make sure once you've gathered it, to put the algorithm, is it accurate? Is it efficient? The disadvantage is doing this without machine learning. It's just a lot of work. There's a lot of management, manpower required, and there's a lack of expertise out there to pull all this information together. So understanding machine learning around new products is important. New channels, what can I invest or introduce my product into a new channel? But ultimately, this boils down to, there's just tight budgets. There's a lot of focus on margin. So the risk of investing in new channel distribution or new products is great. So I need information from multiple data sources that are historically not available, or historically wouldn't be analyzed, but now are available via the Internet of Things. I can start pulling this information together and make sure I can have a solid prediction on what the investment will do. What manufacturers are saying, as we talked about the consumer-focused promotional activity, the traditional approaches are falling short. I going into the store and seeing a promoted price point or a deal offering is just not working. 2 for $5 versus 2 for $6. It's not incentivizing the consumer to try it. So the components of on promotion, on deal, those traditional merchandising engines of price point, they're just not working. So as a consumer, I have to understand, is running more frequent promotions or less frequent promotions, deeper discounts, different deal offerings, they're just not working. It's just not working, and it's not a viable investment. So I had to come up with a new type of consumer-focused promotional activity. So it ultimately boils down to, I need new consumer deals. I need new deal modifications with new types of merchandising conditions. So in order to get that, I need AI, because I can no longer run the risk of a bad promotion. Consumers are no longer reacting to their reaction to promotions, as I mentioned, is just eroding. So I need to use the trade dollars are different, but I need to use those trade dollars to invest in new types of promotional activities to generate more promotable, profitable incremental volume. So in order to come up with those new consumer type of promotional activities, I say, okay, I need to go out to look at social media. I need to look at this data source, these multiple data sources, because I need to get to a consumer focused promotion. When Joel walks into the grocery store and he pulls up his Kroger app, this is the specific promotion that he has because he's gone out and shopped for something online or he's talked about it on social media. So when he walks into his store, his app, his phone, the store on the app for the store that he on his phone, he can pull that up and say, this is a specific promotion for Joel. So it's a new strategy, a promotional activity to invest to get consumer focused, really to grow the top line. The other thing that's important, you'll see with manufacturers and retailers, in order to get this consumer focused promotional activity, I need to create a relationship as a manufacturer, as a retailer with the consumer. I need to understand what's the correct deal modification. I need to figure out how can I help customers maybe purchase products, as combos. How can I help consumers to discover new products? Help consumers to remember what they need. So these are the elements that helps with that new consumer, promotional activity, creating that relationship with the promotion with the customer. Excuse me. As I mentioned, if I walk into the store, I have that on my app. It says, well, I'm buying, there's a deal on hot dogs. Well, it would say, well, you need to purchase buns. You got a deal on buns or something like that. And additionally on the app, it said, Joel, you typically buy cat food. It's time to buy cat food. You need to get cat food. Now, you don't have it on your list. And then maybe discover new products. Hey, you're buying hot dogs. You thought about this new type of mustard. So it's adjusting the consumer really to, instead of sending them with a merchandising additional price point, it's giving them sort of a suggestion. Let's try this, or helping the consumer out remember. It's gathering all this information, as I mentioned, through social media, search engine logs, click-through streams, instant digital deals, and leaving items in the basket. We've all gotten that email from you put something in your Amazon basket. It's still sitting out there. What are you going to do with it? But it's creating that relationship with the consumer that helps lay the foundation of that consumer-focused promotional activity. All this information, again, has to be managed through AI, through machine learning, washing it through the algorithm. We've expanded the data points. We've expanded the complexity of the models. Now, no longer a data science, a manual intervention can manage this predictability, a predictive need. So machine learning AI software is looking at the model. Is this accurate? Is it pushing out the right information? Is it getting the right data? Is it going to the right data points? So it's expanding the data science, it's reducing the manual intervention from a data scientist and starting to learn and gather the information itself. So what we talked about, the intuitive insights. It's creating that bridging the gap. What we're focused on is taking it one step further. We talked about the intuitive insights, just understanding my base customer. It's doing scenarios, but now it's talking about that automated analysis. We're talking about that consumer promotion. So what clients who I speak with and opportunities I speak with, when they say AI, when the ultimate conclusion, when I explain it to them, they'll say, well, from what you described, I need AI to recommend a plan. You need to tell me. I mean, I can get all those data points, and gather it, and I can help you give you which are called the causal factors and data points. But you need to help me create the plan, to create a recommended plan. So what we'll do is machine learning and AI, using the financial targets, using the causal factors, and using all these multiple data points, it will in turn start to develop a plan or create a plan specific to Joel, specific to this customer, this product, or Joel, the customer in this product. So it's creating a specific promotional strategy. It's also connecting all these dots to say, okay, we've got this promotion, we got these data out there. Well, let's take it a little bit more further downstream. Let's dynamically influence inventory levels and costs and understanding competitive pricing. But again, at the end of the day, it's creating consumer-centric promotional activity. So the impact of a plan, specific product controls and product management, and then creating consumer-centric promotion. So that's what AI, and that's kind of where we're focusing, what we talk about with our customers and clients. This is what you kind of want to do, because they're seeing AI and they're seeing the capabilities. And some are looking and say, well, I may not be at the point of creating consumer-centric promotions, but I sure could use a lot of help to better understand my inventory levels and manage my costs and manage my under competitive pricing. I may want to have, create a plan that may not be consumer specific, but I want to create a plan that my account managers don't have to. Tell me the best plan to run. So AI taking all that information in as a consumer, excuse me, as a manufacturer, as a retailer, I may not have to do all those things. One of these things may just be at my sophistication level or where I want to be. So we talked about the execution. We talked about the planning of components and so forth, and what AI machine learning will talk about. It's really talking about the analysis too. Did this deal work? A lot of people, consumers manufacturers and retailers I talk to all the time, I don't get time to do the analysis. I can't do a promotion about it. I just don't have time. It takes too long to gather the data, putting it into my report or dashboard before I can even act on it. So what we're talking about is that analysis. So once that analysis is done through AI, I can say, okay, this promotion just ran. I'm going to tell you the outcome to say, okay, let's change this is the customer experience that we went to on this promotion really didn't drive the revenue. So we need to adjust those components. We need to adjust maybe the combination of the product or the attributes. Kind of understanding that this promotion didn't work. So let's maybe adjust the product mix. Let's adjust the merchandising mix or the particular price point based on what was purchased in the past from the promotion, and make that change or suggest that change. So hyper personalized shopping and really doing analysis around the promotions themselves historically to say, I'm not going to wait for you to do the analysis. I'm going to tell you this is what you need to change. So when speaking with clients, they say, yes, that's what I need. I can't trust the analysis is being done in the field. It may not be accurate, but if I can tell, what the components that I want to have analyzed or focused on, let our AI and machine learning tell us what's the best or the changes required need to be run. One thing we talk about the components of AI or what can work for in automation and machine learning, because of the shift to the omni-channel components, I need to begin streamlining that catalog and product descriptions. Really, we see this a lot on the apparel and industry and so forth with changes. So I need to streamline the process of new products on our e-commerce product catalogs. I need to make sure that the components in the description are improving my search engine results. So in addition to what AI can do, it can say, all right, let's go out and look at what are customers looking for? What are the key words, key product descriptions, key patterns? Because from a search engine standpoint, because I know a lot of my customers are shopping online, I need to make sure that when they type in the current kind of trend and analysis, that my catalog and my product description are hitting. So I'm optimizing my search engine rankings. I'm coming up on the first or second page. So that's important. We talk about too, as I mentioned, hyper-personalized shopping. In addition to what we talk about, the combination, the conditions, but searching for competitor pricing. How can I analyze the demand patterns and then the market trends and so forth to talk about to make sure that I'm getting the best price, to make sure that the pricing recommendations are happening in real time, not losing shoppers. So we're talking about when we're online or even in store as the shelves start to be automated. I need to make sure when the customer walks in, comparative with my competitor prices, they're analyzing that, comparing that to the demand patterns, the market trends. When I go into the store, that price at shelf, the consumer is willing to buy it. So I'm not giving it away. I'm not losing a shopper, but I'm still maximizing my profits. So in addition to the personalized shopping is a combination of the deal offering, it's the price point, the everyday price point at shelf to make sure that it's still incenting the customer to buy it. We said a lot, AI, machine learning sounds like the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's a lot. It's going to be there's a lot of applications and viability. And we've only scratched on some of them. Not only we're talking about the planning pace, the consumer focus and so forth. At Vistex, we're looking at, well, how can we apply this in other areas, where there's rudimentary processes that are taking place, that manual intervention. How can we sort of automate that? How can we look at that? So it's not only the consumer focus, but it's also other areas that we can apply it. But when we start talking about this, this all sounds great, but wait a minute, there are some barriers that are taking place. Well, there are the challenges. They're struggling with it, like at least can CP companies, retailers. they don't have the ability to implement really a large scale analytics or technology transformation. This is in order to gather all this data and push it all or pull it all together in a central repository. It's going to take a pretty massive investment in technology, and that's an internal transformation. And then what we're finding is, in speaking with customers and retailers and manufacturers, there's really a decentralized and there's a lot of layers within their organization related to operations because we're having to get data from different sources, supply chain, marketing, media, just different sources. And there's so many different decentralized components then and different layers, it's difficult to grab all those. There's really a lack of consistent access to the really granular levels of sales data. I can't buy consumption data for every customer that's out there. I don't have all the sell-in data or sell-out data. There's just a lot of first-party data. If so, it's very expensive to get. So it's having that information, the granular, the cost of that, and the information required to understand what the individual consumer is purchasing and the behavior on that end customer. The data is either not there or not available for everyone, or it's very expensive. So it's not cost effective. Now, there are companies that are having success with AI, but they've focused on critical areas. The first thing I want to start to look at is the folks that are, developing the right talent base and operating model to begin working with the initial algorithms to begin started giving the starting point of the predictive capability and the data components, and then being able to hand it over. They've made sure too, who are having success, they've had effective data strategies and governance of the data. So they're not corrupting the data. They're making sure that they have a strategy to get the data, and they make sure the data is not corrupted, and they make sure the data translates into the models. And when they've been successful, they're able to build and rebuild the right data from multiple digital platforms. So there are customers that are having success with that. And again, it all boils down to the data and having the people who can start to pull together initially for the data modeling and components, and then hand it over to AI. So those are the companies that are having a lot of success. They're engaging with it. They have the right talent, the right data resources, and the right data strategy in order to make this work. So what does it look like what does success look like in CP? Because when speaking with customers, they need AI. I want AI. I want machine learning. I've got to use it. So I had to say, well, this is going to be expensive. So we need to make sure that we have some success factors. So what are these success factors? Must-haves are going to be the end-to-end forecasting planning. Is it accurate? The ROI measurement for advertising and promotion allocation. We need to see X increase. In order to get this data from a sales activation standpoint, the cost component, I need to see an 8% to 11% increase in revenue, something like that. Pricing, promotion, individualized store assortments. I need to start setting some benchmarks. And what we're finding in speaking with customers, that's really like an 8 to 11% sales increase. I need to see 11% growth opportunity. And of course, it depends on the individual sectors. Media precise, or is the media available? Is the trend steady? And is there personalized consumer engagement data out there? Have I invested in the research and development testing that I can do in order to do this? And I've got the AI, the investments that I'm going to have to make in AI powered diagnostics, and the services are going to be important. So I need to have, in addition to the 8 to 11%, there's 2 to 5% additional increase. So there's a lot of things that have to happen, but the success is viable once you initially recoup the cost. But those are some of the components that are required. But there's a lot of upside as far as having others to do this. So the biggest conclusion I find when I talk with customers is AI right for the consumer products industry? It is. It is right for the AI products because it's going to allow for the automation of analysis. It's all about big data collecting. It's all about managing big data and predicting the consumer behavior. Now, that's important. But again, the conclusion is that CP companies, they have to understand their position. Is this in their strategy? Can they afford to do this? Can they afford the data? Can I do a data transformation with my analytics? Can I do this? Am I able to centralize the data? And the other thing they're asking, once they look at all these questions, can I afford not to? So they're starting to put together a 5 to 10 year or timeline to say, all right, I need to start putting milestones together in order to make sure that I'm, on the path of encompassing AI, machine learning, and predictive capabilities and automation of this type of analysis into my business processes. So I need to start putting together a time frame of what that would look like, and then start to begin selling it internally. I can't afford to just sit back and wait. So I have to put a strategy in place. So really the conclusions are, it is going to be good for the CP industry. It's what the retailers and manufacturers are looking for, that consumer focused promotional activity and deal offering. But at the end of the day, I'm going to have to do it. The big question is when. So I guess, John, we can hand it over for questions. So
Sure, Joel. We have a few questions that have come in. The first one, how much does personalized shopping and personalized offers depend on shoppers' embrace of retailer apps? What does this imply for brands?
well, there has to be there. The first thing they're going to have to sell is the ease of use of the apps, and that's really a focus on a particular demographic. So what I'm seeing, a lot of the retailers who we talk with, I'm seeing is retailers are setting up, kind of in-store shopper helpers, for folks who may be struggling with utilization of the apps. But in order for this consumer-based product component to work, there has to be an app involved. There's no other way to do it. So some retailers may be focused too on the loyalty cards and so forth, but based upon how the shopper, behaves throughout the store, it's going to have to be an app itself. So a lot of stores are setting up kiosks to help, key demographics. They might be able to use the app or help them download it. So that's become important. But the answer to the question, it's very important. App utilization needs to be a high percentage.
Okay. Next question. In discussions you have had with CPG clients, what are some of the challenges you have come across? I guess it refers to AI, although it doesn't say so, but
Yeah,
maybe there's
I think I'm assuming it is AI, but it's similar to what I mentioned. Is because I get, when speaking with RFPs and clients and so forth, again, I need artificial intelligence. First thing I ask is, what's your data availability? How much data you combine? Because AI is all about managing a lot of data components. Are you getting media data? Are you getting this data? Are you gathering all this data? The response is sometimes yes, sometimes no. A lot of response is I can't afford it. I'm not doing it. So it's creating, it's informing the customer what AI, the requirements are in order really for AI, not necessarily to work, but what AI needs. The second component of that is that central repository, because I say the discussion shifts then, well, how can I maybe point AI internally to help me support it? But then they start talking about a decentralized, as I mentioned in the presentation. I've got data setting here. I've got data setting in this system, data setting in this Excel spreadsheet. So it's a fragmented data repository and nothing is centralized. Or I've got a manufacturing facility that has the purchasing component, but it's in a separate facility, does something like that. So it's the decentralization of data and the ability to in data availability and managing that big data.
okay. Next question. Do you think the CP industry is currently mature enough to support the hype of AI?
Ooh, that's a good question. That's a
Yeah, I know.
that's a good question because, as I mentioned, I get a lot of clients who say, I need AI, I need ML. And it's the same thing that I got, 10 years, 15 years ago with, I need optimization. I need optimization. I need this. I need this. And my question always back to them is say, okay, are you ready for this? Because, and I had a fellow I worked with at a pizza company. He goes, Joel, I don't need optimization to tell me the BOGOs don't work at Publix. I know that. So it's when I get to that discussion to say, is it ready? Is it mature enough? I always ask the customers you're talking about, are you prepared? Because this is going to be a change. This is going to have a really frank discussion with your purchaser, your buyer, your vendors, and so forth. Because what AI and ML, when you start introducing all these product components, is that what you're currently doing is probably not working from a process standpoint. So it starts to introduce the change management component. So is the industry mature enough? I think some aspects, yeah, but I think there still needs to be a little bit more of an evolution that needs to occur in order to really be widely utilized.
Okay, next question. Have you seen any particular CPG category or type of CPG manufacturer looking at AI more intently?
I have. The customers where they're looking at it more intently, they've decided that they're going to focus their AI and the machine learning capability internally. So, and it's really because of customers who have a centralized repository, have that capability, and they were able to make that transformation. So they're able to focus AI and machine learning on back end operational processes, analysis and reporting internally, a little less maybe planning and consumer focus, but more how can I eliminate manual intervention on process? How can I eliminate
Joel, your microphone is a
redundancy?
little askew. I'm getting a little distortion
No
there.
worries, no worries. How
Okay,
can I
better.
essentially utilize this AI machine learning towards redundant internal manual processing rather than making planning and consumer centric focus? Those are the ones that really have utilized it with a good intention and intently.
Okay. Last question. I read about something called generative AI. Where does that fit in?
Generative AI. This is a new concept that Google is really talking about. It's what I've talked about through the presentation is looking at uh, information, data being like text and words and so forth. Generative AI starts to introduce the concept of images and so forth. What would an image look like? So when historically I start talking about, here's these data points and it predicts an outcome. But now when you start thinking, okay, I want to bring in all these data points, but I want to do data being pictures and images because I want to predict what an image needs to look like. And on top of that is so it's really talking about a lot of images, a lot of projections, so kind of taking it to the not necessarily the next level, but introducing a different type of data formatted data output that would be taking place.
Okay, well, that's all questions that have come in. Thank you, Joel. I learned a lot about AI and ML that I did not learn, so thank you very much.
Sure.
And for more information about this topic, please contact Joel at joel.cartwright@vistec.com. Thank you again, Joel.
Thank you, John. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Thanks to the audience. Bye bye.